Having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2557. Where was your family when they saw the ocean for the first time? That's a good question. And some family members may never have seen the ocean, so think about that. And also, welcome to day one of year 8. Day 1 of year 8. Yes. If you missed the show yesterday, we did a recap on the last 7 years of doing lives consistently every day for 7 years. And that was called 7 years Later, We Never Stopped. And we didn't, and we're still going. We're on year 8. We're starting year 8, day 1. And that was day 2556. So we did some recap, look back on some stuff, and just had a good time. So if you want to see that, just go to our YouTube channel, and it's sitting right there in the playlist for the podcast. So anyway, you have to excuse me. I just had a protein shake and it's burping on me. I drank it too fast. But anyway, so talking about seeing the ocean for the first time, I do not recall my first trip to the ocean. Growing up in New Zealand, we're an archipelagical country, which means we're made up of a lot of islands, although now they're disputing that we could actually be, what we see as land is the top of the continent that we're on, which is called Zealandia. So they've discovered this continent called Zealandia, and New Caledonia and New Zealand are both on that continent. And what you see as islands is actually the top of the plate, the continent. Yeah. So you see all the mountain peaks. Yeah. I think that's how it works. I'm not 100% sure, but we're made up of, we actually have over 700 islands that are part of New Zealand. We have 3 main islands, the North Island, the South Island, and Stewart Island. Most people don't realize that Stewart Island's right there at the bottom of the South Island. And if you listen to Maori myths and legends, Maui and his brothers went out in the canoe and they took the grandmother's jawbone, which is Stewart Island, and Maui used that to pull up the big fish, which is the North Island. If you have a look at the North Island, Wellington is the mouth of the fish. Taranaki, which is up there on the west coast where Mount Taranaki is the fin, and then go up further north and you've got like the tail fins and stuff. So, and the South Island is the canoe that they used, and Stewart Island being the mother's jawbone. Now, in Hawaii, because they're also Polynesian and also come from the same area as the New Zealand Maori come from, their story is kind of the same, but a little different. And that the island of Molokai, which is a crescent-shaped island, is actually the grandmother's jawbone. I don't remember the rest of the story, but I know that there was some fishing and they pulled up the islands and they used the grandmother's jawbone to do that. And that is the island of Molokai is the grandmother's jawbone. Just a little side, yeah. It's amazing what pieces of information you pick up. I mean, we've been told Maori myths and legends. We get taught those from kindergarten upwards. In some families, it's taught earlier than that, but we're always having these myths and legends, and they just fascinate me. And then I've been in the States. I've forgotten a lot of them. I know, not a very good girl. Some I do remember, but when I was on Maui, we were over on the island of Hawaii, which is a big island where the volcanic national park is. And I couldn't walk where Brad and the boys walked because I had a screwed up knee. So I stayed in the visitor center and I was just flipping through some of their books. And one of their books I ended up purchasing, and it was Hawaiian Myths and Legends. And I'm like reading through this going, the characters, like Maui was a big character in there. He's part of the Maori myths and legends as well. And there was a lot of similarities in the stories. They were just changed for the country, for where they were, for location. Isn't that interesting that, these people all originated from Hawaii, which they don't really know where Hawaii was, which is where all the Polynesians came from. I think I read somewhere, and I could be wrong on this, that they traced it back to somewhere around Taiwan. I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that one. But Hawaii is where all the Polynesians came from. They went into the South Pacific and went to these different islands and things. And their myths and legends are very similar. Very, very similar. So it was kind of interesting to see that, which then kind of solidified more that they all originated from the same place with their same myths and legends. And the Hawaiians had the story of Maui separating the earth from the sky to push them apart so you could have so you could stand up and walk around, and then he slowed the sun down, and so that's how you end up getting the sun going slowly across the sky instead of racing across the sky. And that sort of thing too. So there's all those sorts of cool stories in there. But today we're talking about the first time you saw the ocean. Oh my gosh. I have no recollection of the first time I saw the ocean. I just remember a lot of my childhood was spent at the beach. And when we were living in Fielding, We would go out in the morning to see which way the wind was blowing, and if it was coming from the east, it meant it was blowing towards the west, which was perfect for kite fishing. Kite as in those things that you fly up in the sky with a piece of string. And yes, you can have a thing called kite fishing. And my dad had this big reel that, sorry, very itchy eye, that stuck into the ground. The reel was about yay big. And it was just this big, huge spool of nylon fishing line. And we would go out there and we would hang hooks every so, and the hooks would dangle down with their little weights on them. And you would put them every so distance apart across the length, depending on how much you were putting out as well. And so he had a box made up that had a sliding lid on it. He'd open it and there would be all of the hooks with their piece of nylon to attach to the kite line. And we would just go and hang them on there and space them out so that they didn't get tangled and stuff like that. And you never put any bait on them. Then you would attach the kite. This is once you were out at the beach, and we had to go because it was an easterly. We had to go to the beach on the west coast, and we went to Hamatangi Beach, and that's what his name was. Okay, sorry, just total different conversation. I couldn't remember a guy's name, and he just popped up on my phone, which could mean a very interesting phone conversation is about to happen in the next couple of weeks. Anyway, we'll see how often he pops up. But anyway, back to fishing at Hamatangi Beach. And so we would get out there, and Dad would have his 6-foot tall poles, which were called surf casters. And we would go and spend a day at the beach. Of course, it was windy. Don't like beaches and wind. And we would set the kite and put it out, and he'd have two, I think they were like equivalent to 2 1-gallon jugs that he would attach to the thing. That would be the weight to hold the lines in the water. Then you'd have the line that would go up to the kite. And then he would launch it, and it would go out, and we would just stand there and have it on free, the reel on free, whatever, unwinding, whatever it is. I don't know the technical terms, so if you fishermen out there want to correct me, please do so. Otherwise, I'm calling them what I want to. So we flipped the switch so the line would just freely flow, and the kite would go out, and we would determine how far out we wanted it to go. And Dad could tell by how far out it was and what the kite was doing as to when was enough and when wasn't, and when we had to bring it back in just a little bit, or we could keep going. So he was the one that would monitor that. And then he would lock the line there, and it would basically sit in the water for a few hours before we reeled it back in. And then in the meantime, us kids would play on the beach, and he'd be out there in the surf. Well, Mum and us kids would play on the beach or sit there, read, whatever. Keep out of the wind was my thing. I don't like sand and beach. I don't like sand and wind. So Dad would go out there, and he would surf cast. He would go out into the shallow end of the water, the shallow water, and cast his 6-foot, his surf casting rod, and he would fish from there. And he could set up several if he wanted to, but he just had his big one. And sometimes we'd go with other families and that sort of thing, and sometimes it'd just be us. And then lunch was we would make a fire there on the beach, sheltered from the wind, so they said, but it was sheltered from the wind. We'd make a little fire, and we would cook sausages over the open fire. Now, my problem with sausages, sand, and wind is the wind would blow sand onto the sausages, so you'd end up eating sandy sausages. I don't like sandy sausages. They were crunchy, and I did not like that. And so it became a thing after that that I don't want to eat the sausages because they've got sand on them, and I would kick up a fuss about that. And so it got known that after that, whenever we had sausages on a barbecue, even if we were in our backyard, oh, we need a bucket of sand for Helen. No, you don't. So, yeah, I became known for not liking the sandy sausages, and it was interesting times. But there were other times that we went to the beach where we weren't fishing, we weren't sand casting. It was the middle of summer. We were out on summer vacations. One year we went to Tolaga Bay, which was absolutely amazing, and really enjoyed the time at Tolaga Bay. They have the world's longest wooden pier, I think it is. The pier's over 1 kilometer long. Don't ask me what that is in miles. I don't know. And you could go out to the end of that and fish off the end of it. And we think we got stingrays a couple of times on the end of the lines because of how fast the line would disappear, and we had trouble pulling it in. And some of the seasoned fishermen there would go, "Oh, you got a stingray on the end of that." So yeah, but we had a lot of fun there, and a lot of fun fishing off the end of that pier, a lot of fun playing on the beach and building sandcastles and just having fun. And then you've got Hot Water Beach in New Zealand that was not far from, oh, hang on, was it in relation to Tolaga Bay? Then you had Hot Water Beach. If I recall, it's close to Tolaga Bay, but don't quote me on that. It might be. I'm pretty sure it's up near there somewhere. But anyway, you would go there, and at low tide, you would dig a hole in the sand, and the hot water would rise up through the sand, and you could have your own little hot pool right there on the beach that you had just dug. It was a great experience, that one as well. But there's so many beaches that we have been to over the years. And some of them have black sand on them, and the black sand is because of the iron content. And you can take a magnet and run it across the top of the sand, and all the iron will pull up and be on the bottom of the magnet. Coolest things. You go to some beaches and they were like pure white. On the west coast, you got more black sand beaches than you did white sand beaches. But the beach was very much a part of our lives growing up. When I got to the States, I was in Virginia, and we didn't actually go to the beach, but we went out and we could see the ocean from there. We could see the Atlantic Ocean. I'd never seen the Atlantic Ocean before, so that was pretty cool. But then when we went on the Pacific one time, and I hadn't been down to the beach. We were in LA. I hadn't been to the beach. I got to go see the Pacific Ocean. So one time we flew into San Francisco, spent a few days there, and then drove the State Highway 1, the coastal road, down to LA. That was spectacular. It was absolutely incredible. I'm looking at the Pacific Ocean from the other side. New Zealand's down here in the Pacific Ocean. America's up here. I'm used to this view of the Pacific Ocean, and now I got a different view of the Pacific Ocean, and knowing that southwest of where we would run into New Zealand after we got through the Pacific Islands. That was pretty spectacular. And then doing cruising later on and being out on the ocean. There was just something. I still don't like beaches. I love the ocean. If the beach was all wet sand where it's packed that you can walk on it, I'm in. Absolutely in walking on the beach. I just don't like the loose stuff. But that's me. I don't like the loose stuff. And there's something else I was going to add in there. But being on the ocean is just something about the water. I mean, oceans and mountains are my two things. In fact, we were talking today about Mum was talking about when her and Dad get cremated and that sort of stuff. She said, you just go down to the beach and let our ashes from. My dad was like, no, you can't. And he's and I said, and Dad's going, no. And I looked at Mum and I said, Dad wants to be buried on a mountaintop. And he goes, yep. And he's never told me that. I just knew that that's where he wanted to be. He wants to be his ashes scattered from the mountaintops. Then they were talking about which mountaintop they wanted to be scattered from. And I said, just remember your children and their physical capabilities. And any other family members that may be coming with us. And so we kind of talked about that, and we've found the spot, and we'll see what happens. Depending on when they go. But we talked about that sort of stuff, and about how you can't just be buried on a bit. You can't have your ashes just scattered on the beach. You got to get special permission and all that sort of stuff to do it. Like when you're at sea, if you're on a cruise ship and you want to do a burial at sea, there's a whole rigmarole performance thing you have to go through to get that okayed and all of that sort of stuff to be able to have a formal ceremony off a cruise ship. There are boats that will take you out to the ocean to do burials at sea and that sort of stuff as well when it comes to ashes. But ocean just has this calming effect on me, as mountains do. Put me on a mountain, put me on an ocean, I'm happy as Larry. I will completely decompress and just feel free. It de-stresses you. It reduces anxiety. It helps with depression. It's just that, and some people are water, some people are mountains, some people are both. I'm both. I could be, like, my dream home is to be a log cabin on a lake facing east with mountains in the background. So I can sit there on the porch when the sun comes up and watch it come up over the mountains. Then in the evenings, the sun was setting behind me and it's painting the mountains on the of the sunset. And just to be sitting out on my porch and watching that, the world come awake in the morning and watching it go to sleep at night, that is my dream place. Water, mountains. I'm happy. I love lakes. I love rivers, creeks. I used to go tadpoling in the creeks when I was a kid. We had a creek not far from us and we used to go and catch tadpoles. So it was just amazing growing up near water and being able to have that ability to go to beaches. And we were no more, wherever we lived, we were no more than couple hours from the beach. Yeah. I'm just trying to think all the places we lived in. The longest drive we probably would have had to the beach would have been maybe a couple hours. Yeah. The advantages of growing up in a coastal country, in a country surrounded by water. But seeing the ocean for the first time is a moment many people never forget. Whether they were a child on a family holiday or an adult finally reaching the coast, there is something unforgettable about the first glimpse of the endless horizon. The sound of crashing waves, the salty air, the feel of sand beneath their feet, and the sheer size of the sea leave a lasting impression. For families who lived inland, a trip to the coast was often a special occasion. It might have involved hours of traveling, carefully packed picnic baskets, and months of anticipation. Children ran towards the water with excitement while parents watched with smiles, creating memories that would be shared around the dinner table for years to come. The first visit to the ocean often became the beginning of a lifelong love of the sea. Some families returned every summer, building traditions that stretched across generations. Others collected shells, flew kites, built sandcastles, or simply sat together watching the waves roll in. Those simple moments became treasured family memories. These experiences may never appear in any official record, but they tell us so much about the lives our families lived. They remind us of the family history. That family history isn't about births, marriages, and deaths. It's about the moments of wonder, discovery, and joy that shaped who our families became. So your challenge for today, and trust, and there are people that I have met who have never seen the ocean. When I was in the States, it amazed me that I met people who had never seen the ocean. And I'm like, what? Had never seen the ocean. To me, that was sort of like, I grew up near the ocean. Okay, I was fortunate. I grew up in a country surrounded by water, and it wasn't very far to go to the beach each time. But to have somebody who lived inland all their lives, and they would do some tripping around, had never seen the ocean. That just blew my mind. And yes, I understand how big the United States is, but just having people who had never seen the ocean, it still blows my mind. It still blows my mind. So your family tree challenge for today is ask a family member about the first time they saw the ocean. How old were they? Who were they with? What did they do when they reached the beach? Did they run into the water, collect shells, or simply stand in amazement? Record their stories today, because sometimes the memories that stay with us forever begin with a single wave. And then let us know in the comments below some of the stories that you uncover along the way. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konera.